Hello everybody, it's Rick Miller with Southside Realtors, and thank you again for watching my Jodico Properties YouTube channel and your continued interest in this series on Saving Monica. Next up is Saving Monica episode number 7. We finished the rehab, so in this video we will be discussing how to determine Monica's market value. We have a lot to do, so let's get started now. Now that we have Monica ready for sale, my next objective is to determine sales price. If you've been following along with the video series, I've been sensitive to what I thought the property might appraise for. Keep in mind, I'm not an appraiser, but as a realtor, I need to know enough about the market and property in relation to condition, location, community, and recent sales, similar size and style in order to have a general idea how an appraiser might identify that property's value. So for me, becoming intimately familiar with the property is most important. Being technically familiar with houses in general and their potential liabilities, improvements, familiar with their geographical location and subsequent costs associated with homes, all works to my advantage when trying to determine market value and trying to assume what a property might appraise for. Having seen a lot of different properties and understanding what is popular at the time and what trend is starting to fade is also helpful. But nothing helps me more than pulling prior sales of similar properties in close geographical proximity to my subject property. Trying to identify market value and what to list a property at can be very, very complicated and one of the most difficult parts of any realtor's job. Price a property too high could cause a property not to sell and cause it to sit. Price a property too low, believe it or not, could also cause that property to sit. Or simply put, inhibit the seller from realizing the true value of the original investment. But for the purposes of this video, I want to keep it simple and give you an overview of the process that I go through and a few of the variables that I consider when trying to determine market value. I must also point out, for the purposes of this exercise, that market value and list price, they aren't always the same. The difference between the two is really beyond the scope of this video. However, we will discuss the differences in the upcoming video when we discuss what we're going to do to market Monica. So let's keep the confusion down for now. Let's just think about market value of Monica. That might all be clear as mud right now, but I am confident between this video and then next week when we talk about marketing Monica and the actual list price we want to attach to it, it will become much, much more clear. But the first thing I do is something most anyone else can do, and that is look up the property on one of the major real estate websites. Those websites being something like Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia is another one that I like. And then also looking it up on the county record and compare all of that. Really, they should be pretty similar. The county record should be a little bit lower, usually, sometimes, not always, but it should be. My understanding is that the sites simply pull from recent local sales and the county record and come up with a value. This gives a general idea what I'm looking at, but that is where the easier part ends, understanding no two properties are the same. Point being, if we set two homes side by side with the same floor plan, and what is the likelihood of that everything else in that home will be the same, I can look at photographs of prior homes that have sold to get a better idea as to some of those differences. And those differences can be very broad. You know, people live differently, they care for things differently, they change things, add things, and eliminate other things, so on and so on. But you get my point. So for this reason, I utilize two different realtor tools to pull properties from. I examine those properties, evaluate the differences between those properties. I add value or subtract value from my subject property based on those comps that I want to use that might have slightly better or inferior features. This is not an easy process, and it takes time. And if you've ever wondered what a realtor does, well, that is a very important aspect of their job that most folks don't think about or know about. Just knowing properties and seeing a lot of them, it takes more than to be able to assign market value than just doing that. But my analysis on market does not end here. Let's look at a few other more important variables I like to consider. When pulling comps, I like to use sales that have occurred in the most recent time period as possible. I typically start going 3 months back, and then I start working back from there. I try and stay as close to the same size, square footage of the home that I can. This also includes the total number of stories, or if it's a ranch style, total number of bedrooms and baths and half baths, and then a lot size too. An appraiser told me once not to deviate much in the age of a home than 5 years, even if the comparable I want to use is in the same neighborhood. This came up once when I was on one of my sales when the property was one of the 3 homes in the subdivision that was built in 2007, and the same builder did not continue again until 2014. Looking at the homes in the neighborhood and looking at the homes that I could see online, I could not tell what was built in 2007 or what was built in 7 years later. But if you think about it, the appraiser made good sense and explained why he used those other comps a mile down the road. Location and proximity to schools, shopping, how well other folks in the neighborhood maintain their property is also important and is given consideration. It's true that one poorly maintained property in a neighborhood can bring others down. I also watch real close to the total number of homes in the neighborhood that has sold in the last year. If there's an unusual amount of high activity, I can't help but wonder why. And it usually causes me to have to dig a little bit deeper trying to figure out if there's something out there that might be causing it. Sometimes, given the age of the subdivision, it may be nothing more than original owners downsizing and transitioning. Typically, folks change residence on an average of every 5 to 7 years. If a subdivision is experiencing transition, let's say the original owners around the probably the 15 to 20 year mark, well, it may just be a natural progression of getting older, children moving on, and wanting to downsize. So subsequently, I also try and look at pricing trends for all property within the subdivision near the area over the last 6 to 12 months. Whether it's a hard or soft market and the trends are headed in the opposite direction, obviously something is up and I need to figure out what that is. And along with those pricing trends, I also like to identify the number of days on the market. How long are the homes in the subdivision or in that general community sitting on the market before they actually go under contract? This usually feeds into some of my marketing strategy, which we'll discuss in Saving Monica video number 8. Finally, although it is not always practical for sellers, time of year does matter. Most folks transition in the spring and summer, mostly because of wanting to adjust children to new schools and communities. And it's just easier to move in the spring and summer opposed to the winter holidays, let's say. There is no doubt we can go on and dice things up a half a dozen different ways, trying to figure out what are the best comps to use, how to evaluate those comps against our subject property, and trying to figure out what the property is worth and what sales price we should set. Our objective here is to sell the property, number one, and then to sell it for top dollar opposed to the property sitting and becoming a dead asset. And also remember, the longer a house sits on the market, the more difficult it may be to sell. Just think about it. If a house sits on the market for 3 months in what is otherwise known as a pretty active real estate market, what would you think about that house that is sitting? And whatever you're thinking, you're probably right. You're going to wonder, what is wrong with the house? Why hasn't anyone bought it? Is it overpriced? Will somebody take less money for that home? So on and so on. You have probably heard this before, but I'll say it again because I've said it to clients many times in the past. Are we pricing the property to sell, or are we pricing the property to sit? And let me say this, and I really believe this, there's really no right or wrong answer to pricing your property, so long as you do it objectively. I also believe if you are objective and your pricing is in the ballpark, let's say, the market will take care of the rest. If somebody will come in and offer you a little more than asking, then maybe you were priced a little low. If you were a little high in your list price and 2 or 3 people offered you a little less than what you had hoped for, then what they are offering is really where you need to be in the first place. But if you want $50,000 over what your realtor is recommending, you'll probably get it if you're willing to sit and wait for a few years. I'm just saying it is what it is. So pricing is important, and straddling that fine line, finding that sweet spot, it's not always that easy. Now, I have done a pretty thorough analysis of Monica, and like I said, I've been watching the market for the last 3 months, and likewise, I have also been putting my remodel dollars where I hope to get the biggest bang for my buck. For example, biggest bang for my buck from an appraisal perspective, as well as also to be able to catch the attention of the buyer. I think I have pulled good comps to work with, so I feel I'm pretty ready. I am ready to identify a market value on Monica. The next thing we need to do is start thinking about a marketing strategy for her, which I'm going to leave for next week's episode on Saving Monica. So, until then, this is Rick Miller with Southside Realtors in McDonough, Georgia. Thank you again for watching my Jedico Properties YouTube channel. And if you have some other good ideas about pricing real estate and pricing strategies, I would love to hear from you. Please leave those ideas in the comment section. So if you are looking to sell, good luck with your sale. And if you're looking to buy, well, happy house hunting.